Hello everyone, welcome to a new video, and in this video we are gonna thoughtfully complete the DNS section from the uh, Cloudflare website. So let's start without any further delay, and I am guessing that this video marks the end of the DNS section, and this is our notes, and I haven't uploaded it yet on GitHub, but it soon be uploaded. So don't worry. By marking the end of the DNS, I am very sure that the notes will be uploaded, and the every video will contain the link for the notes from right on. Let's open our Firefox browser, and I was actually playing with ADB Android Debug Bridge on my Android device, the second Android phone that I have. Okay, so time to search for Cloudflare, navigate to resources section. Resources, resources we have learning center, specifically the DNS. So we have read until the securing DNS, and domain registration is a quite small topic. Then we have some glossary in which we are going to revise what we have already learned about the what is DNS zone, what is IP address, what is DNS server. We have a few articles from the net or how the DNSCC work. So these are going to be a very small and minimal topic. So without any further delay, let's start with domain registration. Let me visit the reading mode, and for you guys, let me increase its font size as well. I don't need an update right now. Okay, so I have to complete the DNS attack section as well. I will do that and upload that in the notes. Okay, so what is the domain name and the difference between domain name and a URL? So up to right now you have studied about the DNS, how the domain name is inserted into the packet header in order to make it legit. uh, you must have remember the SPF, which stands for where was SPF? Okay, SFP, I guess. Hmm. Even I also got it slipped my mind. Never mind. But I have make a note regarding that too. What was email dot? Wait a second. When I was in office, I have made a notes regarding that. Yes, SPF and RDNS. Why do email server require these both? Let me zoom it so you guys can also see. This thing will make much more sense if we just read the domain name and continue. After finishing this article, I will switch to that tab and we will discuss that also. Okay. So a domain name is a string of text that maps to an alphanumeric IP address used to access a website from client software. In plain English, a domain name is the text that a user types into browser window to reach a particular website. For example, the domain name for Google is google.com. For example, the domain name for Cloudflare is www.cloudflare.com. Okay, the actual address of the website is a complex numerical IP address. But thanks to DNS, users are able to enter human-friendly domain name and to be routed to the website they are looking for. For example, if I am visiting this website, if I copy this whole website and navigate to a different one, which is website to IP finder. If I paste the URL here, and yes, now I can see the IP address for the Cloudflare, which is based on the USA, United States of America. Sorry, guys. So this was the website, and here it is the IP address that my DNS server is querying for, and the getting the data from this location, this IP address, this following IP address. Okay, and this process is known as DNS lookup. So we have gone to NS, name server lookup, kind of DNS lookup. Okay, but who manages the domain name? The domain names are managed by domain registries, which delegates the reservation of domain name to the registrar. Anyone who wants to create a website can choose a registrar to register a domain name. There are currently 300 million registered domain names. And Cloudflare also has a registrar, and I have actually I already read the article in my office, and it says that the Cloudflare is a very fair registrar which offers domain name at the minimal cost available, or you can say at cost. It doesn't add up its own profit. And it also has a section that why Cloudflare does that, because it wants to build a better internet. So very good Cloudflare. I also want to build a better internet by sharing this. Thank you. So what is the difference between a domain name and a URL? A URL, sometimes called a web browser, contains the domain name of a site as well as other information. For example, this is an URL. It contains the protocol, the path. Suppose HTTPS is the protocol, and this thing slash learning slash DNS slash glossary slash what is a domain name. This is a what this is called a path. HTTPS is protocol learning, and www is an application. World Wide Web is an application on due to which this the following thing can be accessed. Okay, and what are the parts of a domain name? Domain name are broken into two or three parts, separated by a dot. Whether read right to left or the identifiers in the domain name most general or most specific. This section to the right of the last dot, this one dot com, is called the TLD, which stands for top level domain. These includes the generic TLD such as .com, as I can see here, .net, .org, as well as country specific TLD like .uk, .jp. UK for United Kingdom, JP for Japan. To the left of the TLD is the second level domain. We don't have second level, or you can say the Cloudflare is becomes the second level domain. For example, for Google's US domain, the .com become the TLD, the first TLD, and the ye google.com becomes the 2LD, which stands for second level, more specific. But for a much more larger for example, google.co.uk, the UK becomes the TLD, CEO becomes the 2LD, and Google becomes the 3LD. The more the LD, the more specific the domains become. And once a domain name has been registered with a registrar, the registrar is in charge of notifying the registrar whether their domain is about to expire and give them chance to renew so they do not lose their domain name. And some registrar, predatory registrar, will prey on their user expired domains. So by buying those domains, the second they expire and selling back to the original at an exorbitant price. So this is a wrong practice, but it often done by some predatory business. So time to move to top level domain. In DNS hierarchy, a top level domain represents the first stop after the root zone, which is Cloudflare. The first stop is .com. Okay. In simpler term, a TLD is everything that follows the final dot of a domain name. For example, in google.com, .com is the TLD. Some other populars are .org, .uk, .eq. Okay. The TLD plays the important role in lookup process for all the uncached requests. When a user enters domain name like google.com, the DNS resolver starts searching by communicating with TLD server. In the case, the TLD is .com, so the resolver will contact the TLD. Okay. Then provide the resolver with IP address of Google's origin server. Okay. The Internet Corporation of Assigned Names and Number has authority over all TLDs on the internet. It delegates the responsibility of TLD to the various organizations. For example, a US company called VeriSign operates all .com or .net TLD. Another purpose of TLD is to help classify and communicate purpose of domain name. Every TLD will tell you something. For example, .com stands for commercial business, .gov stands for government entities, UK stands for domains from United Kingdom, IN stands for Indian, .org stands for organization, and so on. And nowadays there's another TLD which is very famous, which is .ai, stands for artificial intelligence. And we do have different types of TLD. For example, the generic TLD, which is .com.net, which does not specifically tell about the website. Then we have country code TLD, which specifically tells that the website belongs to a particular country. Then we have a sponsor TLD, which stands for which clearly stands that what the following website belongs to. For example, for developer community .app .dev are the sponsor TLD. .gov is also called sponsor TLD because it specifies that the website belongs to the government. Then we have infrastructure TLD. We don't have very many examples for it, but .arpa belongs to the infrastructure TLD. And finally, we have some reserved TLD, which is specific for some use cases. For example, .example is reserved for example demonstration. .localhost, which automatically resolves to 0.0. No, I'm very sorry, 127.0.0.0, or this goes to up to 127.255.255.255, and it's actually reserved for the loopback address. For those who don't know, loopback address is an address uh, which does not have a physical appearance. Actually, everything sent on the loopback address will resolve to the device itself. So, do TLD matter? There are now so many TLD options available that the choice can be overwhelming. Someone trying to register a domain name. For example, for years, .com was seen as the only option for business that want to be taken seriously. But predict that supply of .com domain dwindles and newer TLD continue to pick up steam. We will see a major shift in perception of the alternative TLD, with big companies like Twitter and Apple starting to adopt alternative TLDs for their product. For example, T.co, which stands for Twitter, I guess, and ITUN.es, which we are already seeing that the shift in action. So it may better to create a clever and memorable domain name using an alternative TLD than to insist on a .com domain. Okay. And time to switch to next article, because these articles are quite plain basics and quite good one. It was smooth. Next, what is a domain name registrar? A domain name registrar is a business that handles the reservation of the domain name as well as assignment of IP address for those domain names. The domain names are alphanumeric aliases used to access website. Aliases are the name that are used instead of something. For example, instead of numbers. For example, the Cloudflare domains is called cloudflare.com and IP address would look something like this. 192.0. Actually, we know that the IP address looked something like this. Next, domain name make it easier to access website without having to memorize each alphanumeric IP address. It should be noted that the registrar do not actually manage and maintain domain name. That part is done by domain name registry. Okay. So keep mind there is registrars and there is registry. And there's a difference between registrar and a registry. And this is explained beautifully using the following diagram. In order to understand it, you just have to For a few seconds you have to I remove the icon from this equation. For example, if I start annotating, because I love to, suppose I'm making a box here, okay, and I'm filling it. Okay. Now, if you see that the registrar, registrant is the person. Okay. One second. Sorry, I misclick it. So the registrant is a person. Okay. Registrant is an individual who registers a domain name. Suppose I become a registrant for a day and I went to registrar. Registrar are like the showroom. And then the example is quite here. Wait a second. I have to change the color. Red is the good one. So the registrar is like a car dealership registrar. We have to visit and see whether my favorite car is present at the dealership or not. If it is not present, I have to create an order to the registrar, and the what registrar will do, it will go back, or it will go navigate to registry and kind of what to say, it kind of order that car from the registry, and then registry is just like a factory or the manufacturer of the car, which actually creates the car and sends to registrar, and then registrar will send to me. So ultimately I will be getting my car, but it may be from the registrar or it may be from the registry, but I don't have the power to communicate with directly registry. The main front face that communicates to a party is registrar. Okay. And the registry operators actually maintains the record for the domain registration. Okay. And that's enough, and that's everything. And what the ICANN does, the ICANN is a non-profit organization that just coordinates the domain name system, that the registry operator and the registrar are working smoothly, and the registrant is actually getting the IP address that he is paying for. Okay. So registrar is like a dealership for domain name, and the registry is like the manufacturer. The registrar facilitates the transaction and provides support service, while registry is in charge of producing and delivering the goods. It should be noted that a key difference between registering a domain and buying a car is that car can be owned by consumer, but domains can never be owned. It only be leased, and it may be leased for a 1 year, 10 year. A user can hold on to a domain name for longer than 10 years, as the registrar usually let them keep renewing their reservation indefinitely unless the registrant allow the domain name to expire. Registrant, who is the person, if a person does not want to own the domain anymore, he can let it expire. But the user never truly owns the domain, they just lease it. Next, our registrar are the only ones who can sell domain name registration? No, resellers are the another type of organization. So suppose a reseller is like a second hand, or second hand not, but kind of second hand, who purchase the domain name from registrar and then sell it to you. But in this case, the value upliftment is much more. So if they are selling something, they might hype up the price. Okay. So the resellers are the another type of organization that sells domain name registration. These resellers sell domain name on behalf of a registrar in return of a finder's fee. While these resellers are legitimate, they are usually operated as a side business and then thus lack the dedicated customer support. Resellers' website rarely explicitly state that they are resellers, and it can be tricky to tell apart from the registrars. Fortunately, there is an easy way to know if a company is legitimate registrar. ICANN has published a list of every accredited and active domain registrars on their website. So you first have to see that list, whether your registrar is legit or not. Everyone who reserves a TLD, top level domain, must fill out who is information for that domain. This is the information about the person who registered the domain. For example, their name, email address, physical address, and phone number. Many registrars provide the option of private registration. In this arrangement, this registrar information is provided the who is listing for the domain, and the registrar act as a proxy for the registrar. This private registration is only as secure as the registrar, since actual registrant's information is held in registrar's database. Okay, this private registration is only as secure as the registrar, and since the register information is held in registrar's database. Okay, what role do registrars play in DNS security? As organizations that sell domains registration have access to their registration information, registrar must keep their data access secure from the malicious actor. In past, some registrars played a role in domain hijacking attacks, which can either change the registration of a domain name without original registrar's permission or abuse the privilege of domain hosting and registrar software system. One example of domain hijacking is attacker making a particular domain direct to a different website in order to impersonate the original site or disrupt its service. I can recommend that the registrar take a number of steps to prevent domain hijacking. For example, better management of auth info codes, which is a randomly generated code that play a role in the domain transfer process. Kind of authenticator apps that you use on your smartphone, which randomly generates a code and you have to enter that in your website in order to access it. The better implementation of domain lock settings that keep the domains from being transferred by improving identity verification for all registration process and record keeping for domain changes. And is Cloudflare a registrar? The second level, the Cloudflare operates a domain name registrar, unsurprisingly called the Cloudflare registrar, that offers domain name registration renewal without markups or renewal fee and with some additional security features. In essence, the Cloudflare registrar is free and only cost what is charged by registrars and ICANN, because Cloudflare is on a mission to make the internet better. And how to choose a domain registrar? Every website needs a domain name. The domain name are purchased through domain name registrar. There are many domain name registrars on the market as they may seem, but at first glance they offer identical service. But buying a domain is a commitment to recurring expense that can go over time. Any website owners need to make sure that they can maintain control of their domain. Sorry guys, I got random sneezes here and there. That's why. So, the buying a domain is a commitment to recurring expense that can go over time. The website owners need to make sure that they can maintain control of their website, stay secure in order to protect their online presence and brand. Given these stakes, it is crucial to select the best domain registrar for one's use case. There are several factors to look for in a domain registrar, including name availability, pricing, expiration period, and security. Cost is probably the number one factor for the most business and website operators. But these are other areas are also crucial. Domain name registrar are the business that enable people and organization to register domain name. The Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers have authorized hundreds of companies to act as domain name registrar with its own unique pricing model, feature set, and protocols. Does the registrar offer the desired domain name? Those looking to register a domain name usually know the domain name they wish to register. When considering a registrar, they should first make sure that the registrar offers the desired domain name. Not all the registrars have access to the same TLD. So, on a good registrar should have a user-friendly domain name search that can be used to confirm whether or not they register a particular domain name. Then we have honest pricing. Some registrars offer excellent deals on the domain name registration, but yeah, be sure to read the fine print. Extra like the domain renewal, private registration may be unreasonably expensive and sometimes even get bundled in. For users who buy a domain at the low introductory price, the best option is transfer the domain to another registrar for renewal in order to avoid an inflated renewal fee. A privacy registration is a privacy feature that allows user to register domains without having to publish personal information in icons who is the registry. Okay, so there is also an option to do that. Beware of transfer fee. Once the domain name has been registered for 60 days, it has become eligible for transfer to another registrar. Some registrars impose costly transfer fees to discourage customer from transferring their domain. This can place their customer in a difficult position. If they decide they want to switch registrar, they still can keep their domain. But it's best to choose a registrar that has very minimal transfer fee or none at all. And look for the expiration grace period as well. Although most registrars offer auto renewal service, they not offer grace period. Okay. And the grace period after expiration can help customer who missed the expiration deadline. This can even affect users who were auto renewal if the credit card on file has expired. And choosing a registrar with a grace period is essential for the user who want to ensure that they do not lose their domain. This is also a good sign that the registrar is not trying to capitalize on expired domain. Okay. And beware of the registrar that capitalize on expired domain. Means once your domain is expired, they will sell to you for sure, but at an exorbitant price. So that's a very simple thing. Consider add-on requirement. Add-on requirement like private domain registration, web hosting, email hosting, SSL certificate. All these are some additional requirements. Next, we have some security. For security, we already know that how much Cloudflare is protecting of that. Consider the user experience. The user experience is this support that the registrar offers you. For example, the on-call support or an email support. And next, finally, getting started with a domain registrar, which welcomes you to the Cloudflare registrar page in order to get a domain for you. Should I get a domain? And the next is expired domain. And yes, this is the diagram I was talking about. But first I have to change the theme to light mode. So this is the time when domain name is leased by the registrant. Okay, box. So this is the time when domain name is leased by a registrant. And this is the period where the lease ends or expires. Okay. And there is a grace period of 0 to 12 month. Okay. Then after that, there is a redemption period of 0 to 30 days in which if the registrant wants to take its domain back, he can do that by filing an application. After that, there is a pending delete state for 5 days. And finally, the domain got expired and auction unless leased by a new registrant. Okay. And how does a registrant know whether their domain is about to expire? It's a responsibility of the registrar to alert its customers when their domains are about to expire. Reputable registrar, for example like Cloudflare, will offer automatic renewals and maintain ownership for the domain name. However, some predatory registrar will instead wait until their domain expires, buy the domain, and then attempt to sell back to the original registrant as much as higher price possible. And this is a form of domain squatting. Registrant also check the expiry date of their domain via who is lookup, who is data, includes who owned the domain, contact details, when the domain was purchased, who is not a centralized database, but rather than the data is maintained by various registrar and registries that are certified by ICANN. Okay. Domain squatting or cyber squatting refers to registrant who register domain name before other people or organization that want to have a chance to do so, often in violation of trademark. Cyber squatters sometimes will attempt to extort money from those who rightfully own the domain. Domain squatting is different from domain parking, which is someone register a domain that they are not actively using without attempting to sell it to somebody else. Okay. I am very sure, guys, that you heard a news about a girl or a couple. I don't know. It was a brother sister, I guess, who registered a domain called Geo Hotstar, and it was a quite a news in India. Geo Hotstar domain, and if I search that, you will certainly find some news. GeoHotstar.com ownership dispute explained. Okay, involving an app developer in, yes, if Reliance is not interested. Yeah. Oh, so they were sibling. So is it is a form of cyber domain squatting? Let's ask the uh, Bing chat. Bing chat. I feel that Bing chat is slightly more refined than ChatGPT because it has access to the articles that on the internet. But ChatGPT is slightly restricted to the internet. It is not up to date with the latest topic. And don't ask me how I know that. And is Geo Hot Star uh, controversy is a form of domain, what domain parking? No, that was domain squatting. Let me zoom it. 200% is a good measure. Yes, the Geo Hotstar controversy is a form of domain squatting. The domain squatting, also known as cyber squatting, involves registries using a domain name that is identical or similar to an existing trademark, corporate name, or personal name with the intent of profiting from it. In this case, a Delhi-based developer registered the GeoHotstar.com and domain, anticipating a potential merger between Reliance Jio Cinema and Disney Plus Hotstar. Then he attempted to sell domain to Reliance Industries in exchange for funding for his higher education. This situation fits the definition of cyber squatting as it involves registering a domain name similar to a well-known brand with intent of profiting from it. So I was right. That's the first thing that came in my mind. So next thing, can the original registrant renew expired domain? Typically, there is a grace period during which the registrant can still buy the domain back without paying additional fee. But the length of the grace period varies from registrar to registrar. It could be short as week or as long as a year, and is not and it may not be offered at all. So Cloudflare registrar offers a grace period of 30 days. The length of the grace period is also depend on the TLD. Following the grace period, there is usually a stretch of time called a redemption period, during which the registrant can still renew their domain. Registrars all typically require a redemption fee for the renewal during this period, in addition to the renewal fee. Okay. When and how can a registrant buy expired domain? After the grace period and the redemption period, if the registrar offer both, they expire, then someone who is not the original registrant can buy the rights of an expired domain name. These two periods together could add only a few weeks and could last serve well a year. Following this, the domain is in pending delete stage for a short stretch of time. For example, we have seen in the following example, this is pending delete stages of 5 days. Okay. And what does pending delete means? The pending delete approximately 5 days. Once the redemption period ends, the pending delete means the domain is about to expire but is not yet available to public. Okay, and can a registrant delete their own domain? Domains are not deleted in the sense that they cease to exist permanently, but some registrar allow registrant to terminate registration for the domain, which is kind of deleting. Okay, on other registrar do not allow registrant to end their registration until the domain expires naturally. In both cases, the domain will usually be made available to the highest bidder afterwards. And if no one purchases an expired domain, it may be returned to the original registry after a certain amount of time, and it will not be available again until the registry decided to release it. And this is how the article finishes. Article was quite plain numb, and now we will discuss about the Cloudflare registrar, why it does and what it does. Okay, so the Cloudflare registrar is a service for registering domain names that does not mark up the price for doing so. It offers same services as other domain name registrar, but without markups, without increased renewal fee, and some additional security features. In essence, Cloudflare registrar is free. The only cost is what charged by registrars and ICANN. Why does Cloudflare offer domain name at no cost? Domain registrars sometimes try to take advantage of the customer by luring them with low initial registration fee. The marking up the price for renewal hugely because customers often have no choice but to renew rather than expire. However, registrars are essentially acting as middlemen, and the prices they charge are commonly disproportionate to the value they actually provide. Cloudflare is on a mission to build a better internet. Offering domain name without markup price is the one way to ensure that the idea can take the advantage of the power of internet. So simply, it is on a mission to build a better internet, and offering domain name is the one way to ensure that the anyone with idea can take advantage of the power of internet. For this reason, Cloudflare passes along the prices charged by TLD and ICANN without any additional fees. And how it is able to do so? Because it takes very little for Cloudflare, but it means very much for Cloudflare to make someone online, because this made a simple transition into offering domain registration. Cloudflare has built in own internal domain name registrar well before offering the Cloudflare registrar in order to keep our domain secure. Okay. Aside from the cost, how Cloudflare is considered to other registrar? It offers security feature, for example, DNS SEC and two-factor authentication, which is also free. For certain enterprise users, Cloudflare offer much more customizable domain service. And it is possible to transfer domain name from other registrar to the Cloudflare registrar. The goal is to make as easy as possible for the customer of other registrar transfer their domain to Cloudflare registrar. Customer can take the following step. For example, let Cloudflare know which domain will be transferred. Okay, unlock the domain and finally obtain the authorization code. Okay, and then we have a revision. Domain name is the name of a website. We already know that. And registrar is the place or the parties involved in processing of a registering a domain name. The registry, the registrar, and the registrant. Registrant is the person, registry is the actually the creator, and the registrar is the building or the situation or the website which is directly contacted by the registrant. Okay, the registry actually issues the domain name. The registrant is the user or company that buys or registers the domain name. In between these two, there is a registrar. These parties can act go between. So ANT, RAR, and then RY, try. Next, how to buy a domain name. And this is a very easy thing. How to buy a domain name involves finding and purchasing available one from domain name registrar for anyone starting a new business, building a web application, or launching website. Learning how to purchase is a very first step. To find the domain name registrar with a good reputation, identify domain name that are available, choose a domain name, compare prices, and purchase the domain name. A domain name is the name of a website or what is something known as URL. Domain names are used instead of IP address for finding and loading website. Just as every house, the building has its own street address, websites and applications on the internet have their own IP address. But the IP addresses are a long series of digits and they hard to memorize and type properly. So make the web more usable, the domain name DNS maps human readable. Just type cloudflare.com or whichever website they prefer. Okay, okay. We have already studied the TLD, 2LD, 3LD. So I'm not going to make another revision in this same video. But to find trustworthy domain registrar, identify the domain name options. Ideally, the domain name should be short, direct, and easy to remember. And then we have to choose a domain name, select the name that fit your budget and use case, and then we have to compare the prices. Some domain name register markup domain or charge renewal fees. Cloudflare does not, for the reason price can vary depending on whether one is purchasing the domain and buy the domain. Actually, this article is so neutral that it is not saying that you just have to purchase the domain name from the Cloudflare itself, because you may be finding a better deal with some other features bundled together, for example web hosting and etc., with some another company. But Cloudflare is a domain name provider. It just wants to inform you. After all, you are on its website in order to learn the resources. And you up to this video, I think I have made more than 10 plus videos uh, regarding the Cloudflare's knowledge center, and it's a great thing. It's a great resource. So buy the domain name and finally follow the registrar's instruction to complete the process or purchasing of domain name. The Internet Corporation of ICANN keeps track of who operates domain name. Some contact information is required. Even though people use the words like buying and purchasing, the actual domain names are rented or leased for a specific period of time. And domain name needs to be renewed when the initial lease period ends. Most registrars will renew domains automatically using the stored payment method. They provide a 30-day notice to allow registrant to opt out of renewal. Okay. Then we talk about the predatory registrar. It does not follow the standard practice and tries to overcharge you by selling your expired domain to yourself, or may not offer the grace period or the delete period or anything that all. Okay. And how much a domain name cost? It are priced according to their demand and availability. If the domain name is in high demand, likely to cost more. Okay. Registrar may also charge renewal fees on initial term of the domain name purchase. This adds to the cost of a domain name. Okay. And does Cloudflare sell domain? Yes, it offers a full platform for building, launching website and application. This includes the Cloudflare registrar. Cloudflare simply process the charge. Okay. I think I should host a website on Cloudflare. Then we have DNS zone. Before starting DNS zone, or I think we finished the DNS zone. Let's continue. So the DNS is broken up of many different zones. These zones differentiate between distinctly managed areas in the DNS namespace. A DNS zone is a portion of DNS namespace that is managed by a specific organization or administrator. A DNS zone is an administrative space which allows for more granular control of the DNS component, such as authoritative name server. The domain namespace is a hierarchical tree with the DNS root domain at the top. The DNS zone starts at a domain within the tree and also extend into subdomains or multiple subdomains, which can be managed by one entity. A common mistake is to associate a DNS zone with a domain name or a single DNS server. In fact, DNS zone can contain multiple subdomains. So it is a virtual division, okay? Not the physical one. And multiple zones can exist on the same server. The DNS zone are not necessarily physically separated. Zones are strictly used for delegating control. Okay? For example, imagine a hypothetical zone for cloudflare.com and its three subdomains: support, community, and blog. Okay. Suppose the blog is a robust independent site that needs separate administration, but the support and community page are more closely associated with Cloudflare.com. So this is the Cloudflare.com zone, which has the support, community, and the Cloudflare.com zone itself. Then we have the blog zone, which is separated. Okay. And in this case, the cloudflare.com as well the support would all be in one zone. The blog would exist in its own zone. All the information of zone is stored in what I call the DNS zone file, which is a key to understanding how the DNS zone operates. The zone file is a plain text file stored in DNS server that contains the actual representation and contains all the records for every start of the domain. Zone files must always start with a SOA record which contains important information including contact information for the zone administrator. And a reverse lookup contains a mapping from IP address to host, the opposite function of the most DNS zone. These zones are used for troubleshooting, spam filtering, and bot detection. Okay, so we also have a reverse lookup zone, which contains the mapping from an IP address to the host. Okay. And suppose, for example, if I ask the chat GPT for the DNS zone file, okay, I want to create a DNS zone file with info. Let's see what it will do. So this is the zone file for cloudflare.com and its subdomain. Okay. So at the rate stands for root. For a better understanding, let me open it in a new tab. So Control N and paste it here. And it is not a markdown file, I guess. Okay. Slightly let me zoom out. Yes. So time to live is 86,400, which is default TTL. At the rate stands for root. In I don't know, in stands for whether it is for India or SOA, which stands for what is SOA? Start of authority, SOA. Let me copy it because it's going to be needed. SOA, start of authority. Okay, next. Uh, One second. What mess did I did? I think I unattached it. Okay. So we have the ns.cloudflare.com, admin.cloudflare.com with a serial number, refresh, retry, expire, and minimum time to live. Then we have ns nameserver.cloudflare.com. Then we have nameserver2.cloudflare.com and IP address for the Cloudflare, IP address for the support, IP address for the community, and we have a mail.cloudflare.com. V equal to SPF1 include underscore SPF1 cloudflare.com slash tilde all. Tilde all means it allows any other thing. Okay. And we are not getting much of it because we are not actual engineers. We are trying to be the engineer, and this is how we become engineer. Okay. Then we have IP addresses. This is going to be a very interesting thing. IP stands for Internet Protocol, which is set of rules that make it possible for devices to communicate over the internet. With billions of people accessing the internet every day, unique identifiers are necessary. Okay, so this is a client. This is suppose my computer. I need the address for the example.com. So my computer queries the DNS resolver, and DNS resolver has not the IP address for the computer.com example.com in its cache. So it will query the original DNS server, and which DNS server will provide the necessary information. Okay. It may contact to the name server, actual server, and then it will send the address requested to the DNS resolver. And then the DNS resolver will pass out the address and it cache it also. So it will be it will be available on the DNS resolver itself. Okay. And now the client with the following IP address can visit the actual web server of the example.com. So these are very simple thing. A computer IP address is like the physical address of a house. If someone calls a pizzeria to order a pizza, they need to provide their physical address. Okay. For example, when a user types domain name like google.com into web browser, this will initiate a request to Google's web server asking for the content. Once Google receives the request, it needs to know where to send the website content. And for this reason, the request will contain the asker's IP address. Using the provided IP address, Google can send a response back to the user's device, which will display the content in user's web browser. Okay, okay. There's a very, very, very plain article. Actual difference or actual article starts here. Difference between IPv4 and IPv6. First is size. IPv4 32 bits, IPv6 128 bit. And actually there's an IPv5 as well. But these are not such of improvement over IPv4 because the IPv4 is having some problems like the limitation of the address, and IPv5 is actually not solving that. So the true successor will become the IPv6 with its enlarged size. Okay. So this is you can study that it is a 32-bit format. So it allows 2 to the power of 2 raised to the power of 32 or 4.3 billion unique IP address, which is turns out not to be enough for the amount of devices that are now on the internet. So now it transitioned to 128-bit, and IPv5 was an experimental streaming data protocol but was never implemented because it uses the same 32-bit formatting, so it did not adequately solve the problems of unique IP addresses. For the reason, IPv6 became the successor of IPv4. And then there is something called static IP and dynamic IP. If your IP tend to change automatically from time to time, then it is called an dynamic IP, because dynamic means to be changed. So uh, what your router does, it has a pool of IP addresses which can be assigned to every every devices that is connected to it. For example, there is a router, and when I turn on the Wi-Fi on my phone and it connects to that router, actually Wi-Fi connects to WAP access point. So keep that in mind, but not for this one. So if my device connects to that router, and this router will assign a temporary IP address for my device, and if I disconnect it and may connect a different device, then there might be possibility that the same IP address is leased to this until the pool of the IP address is finished or expired. And dynamic IP address is the most cost effective ISP rather than assigning each user a permanent static IP address. So the ISP, the internet service provider, provides a single IP address to its device, which is customer edge equipment, I guess. And this customer edge equipment is configured with a pool of IP address, the private IP addresses, which is assigned to multiple devices, and it has a limitation. So there may be 15 IP addresses or 20 IP address, and I don't know how much, but these are temporarily assigned to the device that is connecting to it. And the all every traffic is being transferred with the same IP address to the original ISP. Okay. Some ISP customers, such as large enterprises, will pay to maintain a static IP. Okay. For example, Cloudflare's 1.1.1. However, most users having a dynamic IP address is sufficient. When hosting a web server such as self-hosted website, API or gaming server, dynamic IP address can create problem. A change in IP causes their DNS queries to fail, effectively taking up the resource offline. Luckily, these issues can be corrected using Cloudflare's dynamic DNS. Okay. So if the IP is dynamic, then the DNS need to be dynamic as well. That's a good part. That's the neat part. Okay. Time to visit the next article, which is where we were. What's an IP address and what does it matter? Okay, so we were at IP address. Time to move to DNS server. Why does it feel that we have already seen that DNS is the phone book of internet? Server is a device or computer dedicated to provide services to other programs or clients. DNS server resolves a DNS query, and in typical DNS query without any caching, there are 4 servers that work together to deliver IP address. First is recursive, roots name server, TLD name server, and authoritative name server. After again checking our notes, we can see that we have the 4 parties involvement in the DNS. First is DNS recursor, root server, TLD server, and authoritative name server. So these are referring this to the same four. Okay. The DNS recursor, also known as DNS resolver, is a server that receives the query. Okay, we have actually studied this article in depth. I'm not planning to actually spend very much time to this particular article. So, what is DNS caching? Actually, DNS caching is storing the data that is being accessed to the locally. So, the next time it will be asked, it can be um, sent, and it makes the lookup process faster. Once the caching time limit expires, the resolver must retrieve the IP address again, creating a new entry in the cache. Okay. And this time limit is referred as time to live and is set explicitly in the DNS record for each site. Typically, the TTL is in our 24 to 48 hours range. A TTL is necessary because web server occasionally change their IP address. So resolver cannot serve the same IP from the cache indefinitely. Okay. DNS server may fail, and there are various technologies like load balancing or redundancy management softwares which can resolve some of the issue, but it may be happened in but it has been happened in 2016 when a DNS provider didn't experience one of the biggest DDoS attack. So there's a DDoS attack on DNS server as well. And what about the DNS security? The DNS servers are compromised or otherwise fail. It can hugely negatively impact on user business and internet. Like anything connected on internet, the DNS server are vulnerable to range of attack, such as impersonation, or the DNS security measures like DNS help prevent such attack, keeping both server and user rely them on secure. Cloudflare offered a managed DNS service that come with built-in security for protecting DNS server from attacks and other common source of server failure. So we will see that too. Then we have DNS root server. Okay. The administration of DNS is structured in a hierarchy using different managed areas or zones. Okay, so we have root, then we have tld.org.com.net, then we have the domain name server, and then we have what is it? Hmm. So we are not actually talking about the DNS description or the DNS bifurcation by this measure. We are talking something different. So, during an uncached DNS query, whenever a user enters a web address into their browser, this action triggers a DNS lookup, with all DNS lookup starts at the root zone. Once the lookup hits the root zone, the lookup will travel down the hierarchy of the DNS system. Okay. The first hitting the TLD, then server for the specific domain, and until it finally hits the authoritative name server. So this is the authoritative name server. Okay, for the correct domain, which contains the numerical IP address of the website being sought. This IP address is then returned to the client. Interestingly, despite the number of steps, this process can happen very quickly. Root server as essential part of infrastructure of the internet, web browser and other internet tools would not work without them. There are 13 different IP addresses that serve as the DNS root zone, and the hundred of redundant root server exist around the globe to handle requests to the root zone. But why there are only 13 DNS root server? There is misconception that there are only 13 root server. In reality, there are many more, but still only 13 IP addresses are used to query different root server. Limitations in original architecture of DNS require that there need to be a maximum of 13 server address in the root zone. In early days, there was only one server for each of the 13 IP address, most of which were located in US. Today, each of the 13 IP address has several servers which use any cast routing to distribute requests based on the load proximity. Right now, there are over 600 different DNS root server distributed across every populated continent of the earth, but has originally 13 IP addresses. Okay. So, what operates the DNS root server? The ICANN, Internet Corporation for Assigned Number and Name and Number, operates server for 13 IP address in the root zone. Dedicated operation of 12 IP address to various organizations, including NASA, University of Maryland, VeriSign, which is the only organization that operates two of the root IPs addresses. Cloudflare actually helps to provide DNS anycast services to one of the root server known as froot. The Cloudflare supplies the additional froot instances under the contract with ISC. And what is froot actually? What is froot? Froot is one of the 13 root names or root name servers on the internet. It is operated by the ISC, Internet Systems Consortium. Let's copy it and paste it. Okay. And this helps in translating domain name into IP address. So a froot actually employs the anycast deployment, and it is being done by, as discussed here, by Cloudflare. The Cloudflare supplies the additional froot instances under contract with ISC, the Internet System Consortium. Okay. And how do resolver find the DNS root server? Since the DNS root zone is the top level of DNS hierarchy, the recursive resolver cannot be directed to them in the DNS lookup. Because of this, every DNS resolver has a list of 13 root servers built on its software. Whenever a DNS lookup is initiated, the recursor's final communication is with one of those 13 IP addresses. Okay, what happens if the DNS root server becomes unavailable? Thanks to the use of anycast routing and heavy redundancy, because creation of more than how much? Once again, more than 600 different DNS root server. The root servers are very reliable, but on rare occasion, a root server will have to update its IP address. In this case, the recursive resolver can continue using the 12 IP address in the root zone to perform DNS lookup until their software is updated and the correct address of all 13 servers. Since resolver will retry until they reach working on a root server, there is no disruption to the normal operations of the internet when the root server is down. And they learn more about the DNS use anycast to improve reliability. Okay, we will see how the DNS anycast is used. And now we have root server. We have studied the root server. We have dynamic DNS and reverse DNS in detail. So we will study that after a small break. So after I hydrate myself and in order to continue. So be there. I will be back in a few seconds. Emergency arises, guys. So I have to go to market because today is week off. I may come back from the market, make another video regarding that. So I am pausing this stream. As I can see, it's already been an hour for the stream. So which is our quite the mark. So see you guys in the next video. Thank you for being in. We will continue from the topic which is DNS root server after that. So thank you very much guys. Thank you.